Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. Now, if there's two things that's guaranteed to have conflicting emotions, it's money and sex. Guaranteed, guaranteed. Now, I don't know about you, but my first encounter with sex was very underwhelming, shall we say. Probably because I'd watched too many Hollywood movies and was expecting like hearts and flowers kind of thing. The thing is, at school, we're kind of taught the very basics. We're kind of taught what goes where. We're not taught about the emotions, and we are certainly not taught about pleasure. Now, I remember a time I used to work with racehorses in Newmarket from the age of 14. I spent a lot of time in Newmarket. And I remember being out one day and some lad from another yard shouted out, "Oh, she's crap in bed." And I was really confused at the time because I was about 17, 18, because I didn't know if I was crap, what was good, what was being good in bed. We're not taught that kind of thing. And I know looking back now that I probably was crap in bed because I just pretty much laid there and kind of like, we're not taught about how to enjoy it. And nowadays you have kind of like young people have access to porn and stuff, which we didn't so much now when we were younger. And there's just so much conflicting thoughts, feelings, emotions about sex. As I say, we're not taught about the emotional aspect, and we're not taught about sexuality on a kind of spiritual level. So that's why I said it's one of the things that we have the most conflicting emotions about, because there's part of us that maybe wants to enjoy it, but there's another part of us, especially in my generation and generations before that, that were maybe brought up to think that to be overly sexual was a bad thing. Good girls don't like sex, all that kind of things. You're just meant to lay there, think of England, or it's just about having kids, that kind of thing. And as I say, it can create so many conflicting emotions. And so many of us also have had experiences of a sexual nature that were maybe unpleasant, in terms of abuse, or they just, maybe felt pressured. We didn't really want to be there. I know when I was younger, I ended up in situations where I just didn't know how to say no. I went into panic mode, basically. I went into freeze mode, situations that I didn't know how to get out of. And my brain at the time decided that it was just easier just to kind of let them get on with it, finish and gone. But that can also create guilt and shame because we feel slutty. We feel slutty because we've gone in situations, or we've done like I did as well as a young girl, slept with guys just because I needed to be loved, and it was the only time I felt good about myself. And although I didn't realize I was doing that at the time, but because I had such low self-esteem, I was constantly looking to others to make me feel better. And because of that, because I didn't value myself, I was always attracting people who didn't value me either. And that had the effect of making my sense of self-worth even lower, even worse. But also there's a part of me that kind of felt like I was a bit of a slut because, good girls don't sleep around kind of thing. Not that I was at it all the time, but you know what I mean? There were times when I didn't really want to have sex, but I felt kind of pressured and just didn't know how to say no without causing upset and whatever. And that can cause you to carry wounds. That can cause you to carry shame and guilt, and that shows up in our body. So we're going to discuss and discover if you're holding on to any unhealed wounds, because the thing is, money and sex are interlinked, and how we feel about sex and our sexuality can also influence how much money we make, to put it on simpler terms, because money is energy, sex is energy. And if we have blockages, or if we have wounds, if we have trauma in any part of our life, it can affect other areas of our life. I was doing some work with a coach a while ago, and I discovered that I had a belief that I don't deserve pleasure. Now, I have no idea where that came from. And pleasure comes in all forms, from sex, eating, enjoying music, earning money, all sorts of things. So we may have beliefs that we don't realize we're operating from. So part of this module is to discover if you have any beliefs, any kind of faulty thinking, any limiting beliefs that you may be operating from that are causing you conflict, that's causing you guilt and shame. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a relationship or not, this isn't important because we often think of sexuality and sensuality as being between two people. But a lot of it is to do with just feeling comfortable in our own body, because we are sensual beings. We are designed to enjoy pleasures, which is why we have such complex taste buds, so we can enjoy different kinds of foods, which is why we have so many nerve endings on our body, because we're designed to enjoy pleasure, even from just a simple touch as well as kind of sexual pleasure. And as I said, even if you're not in a relationship, even if you've got no real interest in having sex with someone else, it's still, we need to heal any wounds that you may have. So many people have had an unpleasant sexual encounter, whether it's like outright abuse from family members, from someone they know, whether they're abused as a child, or just where they've been in a situation that's made them feel very uncomfortable, made them feel dirty, made them feel guilty. When I was assaulted years ago, the thing that I struggled with most was the guilt of asking myself questions like, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I shout and scream? Why didn't I blah, blah, blah? And that was harder for me to forgive myself than for me to forgive the people who were involved, because I was constantly going through, I should have done this, I should have done that. And the fact is, as I say to other women and men, you never know how you're going to react until you're in a situation. And sometimes our mind just switches off. Our body, our brain, our mind decides that the safest course of action is just to detach. And that is what I did. And we shouldn't feel guilt and shame over that, because we do what we can to survive. And sometimes fighting back is not the way to survive, especially if there's two people, especially if someone's stronger than you. But we can still hold on to guilt and shame. A lot of women who've been through rape, even men as well who've been through rape, find that the guilt and shame that they feel for letting it happen to them, even though they didn't let it happen to them, is actually often the hardest part to get over. And as I say to people, you can do whatever to my body, but you cannot destroy my mind. And us humans are such resilient creatures. We can overcome the worst atrocities. But if you're holding on to any kind of wounds, that can, on an energetic level, cause you recurring urinary tract infections, can cause you pelvic infections, inflammatory disease, lower back problems, problems with your hips, with your legs, digestive problems, anything kind of down in that area. So it can cause you problems on a physical level. So, on an energetic level, will cause you physical health problems. So even if you're not in a sexual relationship and have no desire to be in a sexual relationship, it's still so important to heal any wounds and to feel comfortable in your body, in your whole body, to be able to touch yourself without it feeling like icky and whatever, and to get pleasure from your body. Our bodies are like our means of exploring the whole world. It's our means of exploring everything. If you imagine the universe, this whole planet is like a toy store for us to enjoy. And if we feel uncomfortable, ashamed of our vessel, then we're not going to live as happily and healthily as we deserve. So it's so important to make sure that we're not holding on to any guilt or shame from the past. Make sure we're not feeling resentful towards ourselves or to others, because as I've spoken about before, when we hold on to trauma, when we hold on to anger or guilt or resentment, any low vibration emotions, it will show up in the body in one way or another. A lot of people who I work with who are overweight, for example, they've discovered that they've put on weight as a means of protection. They were unconsciously trying to protect themselves, trying to, make themselves bigger so they felt protected. The same as some women will go the other way and will stop eating because they want to disappear. They want to metaphorically disappear. So things that happen in our past and emotional trauma is played out in our body. Our body is literally a map of our emotions, and we deserve to feel happy, comfortable, confident, and at home in our vessel. It's like, imagine being in your home and feeling uncomfortable and unsafe in your home. Well, this is your home. And we want to feel safe. We want to feel nurtured. We want to feel protected. We want to feel comforted and nourished and loved. And to do that, we need to get in touch with our sensual side, which is kind of different from sexual. They interlink, but it doesn't necessarily mean sexual. And we also need to discover how you feel about sex and sexuality. So there's going to be quite a few questions in your workbook that I want you to work through and really be honest with yourself, and also notice what comes up. Notice what comes up for you physically. So you're going to ask yourself, how do you feel about sex? When you say the word sex, think the word sex. How does your body react? Do you kind of feel like, oh, ooh, yeah, or a kind of tensing? Do you feel, are there conflicting emotions that one part of you wants to enjoy it, that the other part of you is kind of like, oh no, I can't enjoy that because that makes me a slut, and this kind of thing. So are there conflicting emotions? You're also going to look at your mother's or your caregiver's beliefs and attitudes around sex. Again, things she either said or her behaviors. Was she quite open about her own sexuality? Was she quite open about sex? Did she talk about sex, or did she make you feel that it was something you don't talk about? It was just something that goes on behind closed doors, and it was just for making babies and all that kind of thing. And also your father's or father figure's attitude and beliefs about sex. I mean, if you had a father, for example, who was often cheating on your mother, that will affect your attitude about sex. If you had a mother who was very closed, who didn't want to talk about it, who didn't ever show her body, kind of gave you the feeling that your body was something to be ashamed of. Remember, we are so influenced by our parents, our caregivers. They influence just about everything about our beliefs and attitudes. Again, that's maybe where the conflict comes in, that you, from your parents, you were given the sense that, especially if they married early and they didn't have any other sexual partners, and they kind of gave the impression that that's how it should be, that you should meet someone, that's the only person you should sleep with, and that's it, blah blah blah. But that's not what's happened to you, and you feel a kind of guilt because you haven't followed their ideals, and we can have all this kind of conflict going on. So there's a series of questions you're going to go through also about how you feel in your body. Does how you feel about being in your body affect your ability to enjoy a sexual relationship? Are you one of these that it's going to have the lights off, and you don't want people to see you naked, and that can prevent you from enjoying a sexual relationship? Have you ever used sex, for example, to get what you want, or as a punishment? If you don't do this, we're not going to have sex, da 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 da. All those kind of questions, and they are designed to highlight any hidden wounds or trauma that maybe needs healing, or any faulty thinking, limiting beliefs that you may have. And to say, so many times we have these beliefs that we don't realize we're operating from. And it's only when we dig a little deeper and we go, so that's why I behave like that, or that's why I feel like XYZ. So it's awareness is the key, because once we understand why we behave the way we do, why we feel the way we do, why we think the way we do, we can work to change it. Maybe you have attitudes that, you're getting too old to enjoy sex, or maybe you're going through menopause and have symptoms that stop you enjoying sex as well. So it's all those kind of things that we're going to look at. And it's about you accessing your sensual energy, your goddess energy that is within you. And once you do that, you will also be able to attract other things to you. As I said, sex and money are pretty much interlinked. If you have blocks in one area, you will have blocks in other areas. Also ask yourself as well, if you're not in a relationship right now, have your past relationship seems to follow a particular pattern? Have you had a lot of what you call failed relationships that always seem to end the same way? Oh, this always seems to happen to me. And it's about looking at the patterns to see perhaps where you can change those patterns, so that if you do want to call in a loving relationship, you can do that. Because whenever we repeat a pattern, whenever we kind of go through the same challenge, the same situation, it's because there's a lesson there that we haven't yet learned. We're either attracting something which we fear. So if we fear being abandoned, for example, we will often attract people who are unavailable, people who are married, or who don't commit to us and then ultimately abandon us, which is the thing we fear most. Or if we have low self-worth, low opinion of ourselves, we will also tend to attract people who also have a low opinion of us and treat us like crap. And that just reaffirms our sense of unworthiness. Or, as I say, it's showing us a lesson that we need to learn. And the blessing is in the lesson. So don't fear if you think, oh, that's it, always happens to me, blah, 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 I'm never going to find love. Once you start to understand why you keep repeating these patterns and repeating these situations, you can break the cycle and you can move forward. Because a lot of people, I was reading something the other day that's saying a lot of people, either there's a lot of divorces, but people either get divorced or they stay together and be miserable. Wouldn't it be good to stay together with someone and be happy? And a lot of the reasons people stay together and are miserable is because they stop communicating. And they also don't not only stop communicating with each other, they stop communicating with themselves. They stop learning about themselves. Because once you start to understand why you do what you do, and then you can understand why your partner does what they do, and then you can move forward together. So get to your workbook. Again, it may take you a little while. Don't rush it. And again, notice what comes up in your body, what you feel in your body as you are going through the questions, because your body will give you the most information. So if you feel yourself kind of tensing and feeling uncomfortable, that will give you a very big clue that there is a wound that needs healing. And that's great because you're in the right place to do that. So good luck, goddess. I'm not wishing you good luck. Don't need good luck. You're incredible. You've come this far. You've got this. Be excited. Mwah.